The world is getting crazy.
Did you see the lady that got duct tape on a flight?
Great.
They duct taped her face.
Very funny.
That's wild, man.
It's astonishing to me what is going on with our nation's food suppliers and the amount of fires and explosions that are happening just since November.
We're headed into a hyperinflationary depression, which is what makes having this in your possession, along with food, water, energy, security. This is your barterability. This is your wealth preservation, community, and shelter. You have to be prepared to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible.
The real question is, do you keep track of all that's going on so you know play by play what's really happening or think you do? Or do you just go with a prepared mind and let it go? That really gets to the crux of what's going on right now, because I think a lot of people are spending unnecessary energy and being in the fear state all the time. And there's a different approach to all of this. Obviously, the more you focus on fear, the more it manifests, which is why the media loves it so much. It not only sells products for them, but it also gets people into a easily manipulated state. When you're in a fear-based state, you're in a state of easily being controlled and manipulated. That's by design. Yet there's also this need to know, and there's a lot of YouTubers who have a good heart and are putting out content much like this from Jay Bravo.
The banks are warning us. There will be hunger and blackouts. I said blackouts. And this is so much better. And you know what? I have something worse than hunger and blackouts. Guess what that is? Cue the fire.
He's funny, but if you look at his channel and look at all his videos, you can see that it's all designed to get you to click and to get you to watch. And it works really well. And he is very informative. And even though it's fear-based, he's fun to watch, and he puts some humor in there, and he has some actionable insights. Yet at the same time, watching this all the time does get you in that fear-based state, and you start to look at the world very differently. Now, there's also Mike Adams, who is awesome. And he got on the Inspired channel, and he had this to say about the difference between, like, let's say, law of attraction or thinking about fear all the time versus actually doing something. Check it out.
I'm very familiar with the idea of the law of attraction, and so I understand where people are coming from when they say that if you focus on anything negative, that you create that reality. I would counter that with a dose of reality. Let's talk about Tibetan monks who are in their temples meditating and praising the creation of the universe and minding their own business. And then along comes the communist Chinese troops armed, and they kill the monks.
Now, on the surface, what Mike says totally makes sense. You don't want to just be this monk up there that gets whacked by the Chinese, right? But I think this is a very extreme example. And there's a combination of things which make it so you don't have to be at one end or the other, meaning you don't have to be fear-based or just ignoring everything. And I think that balance needs to be struck more often to remain healthy in your heart, mind, body, and spirit, and also for the world to move towards a better future. Now, to show how this could work, take a look at what Gregg Braden says about adaptive resiliency.
In adaptive resilience, we are honest with ourselves. And we truthfully acknowledge that the world that we're living in, for whatever reason, the circumstances have changed. We're not judging them as right, wrong, good, or bad. We're not talking about who's causing what or, what the outcomes are going to be. All we're saying in adaptive resilience is that this is no longer business as usual. And because we acknowledge it's no longer business as usual, it makes sense to take the steps to provide what is called spare capacity. Spare capacity simply means that you recognize it's very possible, maybe even probable, that the things that are available to you on a daily basis typically may not be available.
This, I think, gets to the crux of how we need to think of things. But there's another component to that I think is there and is expressed well with the channel Active Self-Protection. Really good channel, regardless of how you think of the world these days or past or future. Very valuable insights on really protecting yourself and your family. So active self-protection is an interesting clip. And this is an example of situational awareness. And using that situational awareness in this example is when he's going to the mall. Check it out.
So you're looking for things that are out of place. You expect people to be coming and going, and you expect people to be headed to their car or from their car, but you don't expect loitering people, and you don't expect people who are paying attention to you.
Now, obviously, this is active self-awareness when going to the mall, but I think the idea of situational awareness or scanning where you're at and what's going on is one tool to combine in with adaptive resiliency. I think what's interesting about this is looking at adaptive resiliency and situational awareness combined together in a larger sense. So in that way, you can not get sucked in by the fear, but rather periodically scan and see what's going on in a larger context. And in that sense, you're getting a bit of situational awareness, but you're grounding that possible fear that might happen in knowing or reviewing how you've already prepared for the different scenarios. You already have the prep in mind. Now, hopefully you've done that. You've done some prep. And if you have, then that should solidify that energy, meaning it doesn't have to go into fear all the time. You've got that adaptive resiliency, that capacity, and you're using your situational awareness or scanning what's going on a periodic basis without getting totally sucked in to the fear all the time. You're just scanning, you're seeing what's going on, and you're moving on. Another reason you'd want to move away from the fear-based content is much like the reason why you wouldn't want to watch commercials all the time. You think you're not going to get sucked in by the commercials, but you do. It happens at a subconscious level. It's the same with the fear. You think you're not going to get sucked in, but you do. To show this, let's look at a little clip from Dead Poets Society.
I didn't bring them up here to ridicule them. I brought them up here to illustrate the point of conformity, the difficulty in maintaining your own beliefs in the face of others. Now, those of you, I see the look in your eyes like, I would have walked differently. Well, ask yourselves why you were clapping.
If you haven't seen the movie, the first part of the scene has to do with three of them walking individually, like they each have their own different walk. But then when they circled around a couple times, all of a sudden, all of their walk was the same. And then Robin Williams says, well, you may have thought that you weren't, that you would do differently, but why were you clapping? Because they started to clap in the same tempo. Do, 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 do. So another way to look at this comes from Bruce Lipton and explains in the idea of entrainment. Check it out.
All of us are like tuning forks, but if we're all out of tune, then there's a tendency for even a tuning fork that tries to stay in tune will be pushed out of tune by something we call entrainment. And the issue is, how can you survive in this world? And the answer is you must essentially detach yourself from this field around you, not be taken in by the stories, not buy into the fear, not to buy into the threats on our existence, to start to recognize, look, we are creating these lives. If you buy other people's creation, then you manifest what they're creating.
Now, to put this all together into a perspective to something that's really simple is thinking about it in terms of a house fire. You want to be prepared for a possible house fire, right? So you do that by having fire extinguishers, maybe a couple other resources, and then you have a plan, various spots where you can get out of the house, and then you periodically not only review that plan, but actually go through it. So it's a little bit of a muscle memory in there, so to speak. Now, most people don't do this, but if you do this, when the fire happens, you're prepared. You go to your spot, you do the fire extinguisher, you get out of the house, and so on. The point is, you're not perseverating or spending all your time consumed by the idea or the fear that you're going to have a fire. You're not thinking about it, reviewing it every day, and just going into this state of, oh, what if this happened? All the possible scenarios. You have a plan, you let it go so that you have the capacity to do other things and enjoy life and so on. And although it's a simple example, I think it can be extrapolated to the larger whole, meaning by having adaptive resiliency, a bit of capacity for the different scenarios, and then scanning periodically without getting consumed, I think that could really provide a little bit more health to heart, mind, body, and spirit. And if you're in that fear-based state, if you just take a moment to just walk away from it and review what you've done, then it puts you in a stronger state of mind. If anything does happen, you want to have the capacity to respond. If you're always in a fear-based state, you've lowered your energy to a point where when something does happen, you might freeze. If you're in a much higher vibrational state and you've gotten yourself into a state of calmness or confidence, then when something does happen, you have that confidence to draw from. Whereas if you're in a fear-based state, you don't have that confidence to draw from because you're already at that lower state. And so you have nowhere else to go except for frozen. And so rather than like perseverating all the things that are happening, then consider situational awareness combined with adaptive resiliency. One form of adaptive resiliency is by having a little bit of side hustles or having something online that can help you pivot when you need to. And part of this is by basically starting before you need it, right? So I have a little mini series that basically walks you through a very simple process of starting to build an audience online. And in the process, you can potentially not only know all the content you need to create, but also get paid in the process. So it's a mini series. It can help you be adaptive to the world as we move forward. If anything in the past years have shown us, our ability to pivot and adapt is really necessary. The more tools you have in your arsenal, the better off you're going to be. So the link to the mini-series is in the description below. Now, if you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like. Let me know in the comments what you think, and if you have some other ideas on how to basically have a fuller capacity for the changes going on in our world. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.